Hello and welcome to Neo Psychology of me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're carrying on with the attachment unit and we're looking at lesson 4, Animal Studies, Lorenz, 1935. Let's get started. Starter. There are some ethical issues when conducting research into attachment with infants. As a result, some psychologists have studied animals to try and uncover more about attachment. And here's a quote. Ask researchers why they experiment on animals, and the answer is, because the animals are like us. Ask the researchers, why is it morally okay to experiment on animals? And the answer is, because the animals are not like us. And that was Charles Magan in 1941. What do you think is meant by that? Have a think about that. Right, let's have a look at our learning objectives for today. Learning objective 1, show comprehension and apply knowledge of Lorenz. Lorenz's research in 1935. Learning objective 2, identify and analyze imprinting. What is imprinting? And then finally, learning objective 3, to be able to discuss and evaluate Lorenz's research. What are the strengths? What are the limitations? Let's get started with learning objective 1. Let's find out who is this Lorenz and what did he do? What makes him so important that we're learning about him? Animal studies have looked at the formation of early bonds between non-human parents and their offspring. This is of interest to psychologists because attachment-like behavior is common to a range of species, and so animal studies can help us understand attachment in humans. So we can use animal studies, where it may be unethical to do so with humans, to understand our own attachments. Let's have a look at what Lorenz did in 1935. In the early 20th century, a number of ethologists, that's people who study animal behavior, conducted animal studies of the relationships between infant animals and their mothers. Their observations informed psychologists' understanding of mother-infant attachments in humans. One of the most prominent ethologists was Konrad Lorenz, and there he is with his little beard. There we go. Lorenz first observed the phenomenon of imprinting when he was a child, and a neighbour gave him a newly hatched duckling that then followed him around. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that. Mama? Right, here is Lorenz's procedures. As an adult, Lorenz set up a classic experiment in which he randomly divided a clutch of grey-lag goose eggs. Half the eggs were hatched with the mother goose in their natural environment. The other half hatched in an incubator where the first moving object they saw was Lorenz. Okay? Right. Key terminology. Grey-lag goose eggs. Okay? A decent student would say, Lorenz did it with geese. A higher caliber student would go, grey-lag geese. Specific. Okay? And what did he do? Bunch of goose eggs. Half of them with the mother. Half of them in the incubator. And the first moving thing they saw was Lorenz. The other first moving thing they saw in the other group, in the other condition, in the control condition, was obviously the mother. What do you think Konrad Lorenz's research found? Will there be a difference between those geese eggs that hatched in their natural environment with their mother compared to those geese hatched in an incubator with Lorenz? What do you reckon is going to happen? Let's have a look at what was found. He put both sets of goslings together and observed that when they were released, the two groups quickly reformed as the goslings went off in search of their respective mothers. Both sets of goslings had imprinted on the first moving object they had seen. So, sometimes in nature you might see a bunch of goslings and they might be following their mother, or it could be ducklings and they follow their mother, and that is because they've imprinted onto that person. They've imprinted onto the mother. The incubator group followed Lorenz everywhere, whereas the control group, hatched in the presence of their mother, followed her. So each respective group of condition of the goose eggs hatched and imprinted on the person, on the first moving object they saw, and therefore followed that respective mother around. This phenomenon is called imprinting, where bird species that are mobile from birth, like geese and ducks, attach to and follow the first moving object they see. Lorenz identified a critical period in which imprinting needs to take place. Depending on the species, this can be as brief as a few hours after hatching or birth. If imprinting does not occur within that time, Lorenz found that chicks did not attach themselves to a mother figure. So what Lorenz found is there was this critical period in which these ducks, they had to imprint onto their mother within that time. And he found that this critical period was a few hours after hatching. If they didn't imprint within that time, they would never imprint on anything. Let's have a look at this little video to show us what the imprinting looked like. Right, so you saw it's pretty cute, okay? Right, complete the definition. Imprinting is a key term. You need to learn it. Here we go. Imprinting, it's an what readiness. It's an innate readiness. Innate meaning that it's natural. You don't have to learn it. The opposite of innate is learnt, okay? So some things in our lives, we learn them. Some things are innate. For example, blinking is innate. Needing food or feeding is innate, okay? Printing is an innate readiness to develop a strong bond with the mother, which takes place during a specific time in development, probably the first few hours after birth or hatching, okay? If it doesn't happen in this critical period, it probably will not happen, okay? So that's what imprinting is. It's a survival mechanism. So here's a question. Give yourself 5 minutes. Describe Lorenz's procedures and findings related to attachment, okay? If you got that question in the exam, describe. Describe is talking about AO1. You just need to describe, outline, okay? It's talking about procedures and findings. 4 marks, a couple marks for procedures, a couple marks for findings, okay? In your answer, use the terms imprinting and critical period. Use that key terminology. Right, give that a go. Pause the video and write your answer down, please. Otherwise, let's have a look now. Lorenz in 1935 took grey lag gosling eggs and divided them into 2 groups. One group was left with their natural mother and the other was placed in an incubator with the first living moving thing they saw was Conrad Lorenz himself. These goslings started following him around. Lorenz marked the 2 groups to distinguish them and placed them together. The goslings quickly divided themselves up, one group following their natural mother, the other group following Lorenz. This phenomenon is called imprinting and has to take place within the first few hours, known as the critical period, otherwise imprinting will never happen. And that's Lorenz, that's Lorenz's research. Identify one thing you learned from Lorenz's research. Why do you think learning about Lorenz is important? How does Lorenz's research apply in real life? Who is this information useful to? Commonly get questions. Do we need to remember this researcher's name and dates? This one, Yes, the simple answer is yes. You need to remember the name and the date. This is a key piece of research, right? Other researchers, maybe not necessarily. This one, yes. Lorenz, 1935. And that's learning objective 1. Show comprehension and applying knowledge of Lorenz. Yes, we've done that. Can I tick it off? Yes, you can. Can I dig it? No, we're moving on to learning objective 2. Identify and analyze imprinting. What is imprinting? We had a little look at it. Let's look in a little more detail now. Imprinting. Lorenz, 1952, noted several features of imprinting. For example, that the process is irreversible and long-lasting. Lorenz described how one of the geese who imprinted on him, called Martina, used to sleep on his bed every night. So Lorenz did some follow-up research and he found that this imprinting is irreversible and long-lasting. Now, we can draw similarities between imprinting and attachment, but they are not the same thing. Humans do not imprint, okay? But you can see that this imprinting is a similar concept to this attachment that we have in humans, okay? Attachment is also seems to be long-lasting and potentially irreversible, okay? Lorenz also noted that this early imprinting had an effect on later mate preferences, and he called this sexual imprinting. Animals, especially birds, will choose to mate with the same kind of object upon which they were imprinted. Okay, it's really interesting. So it's almost what they're saying is the mother figure that you have defines what you decide is going to be the thing that you will be sexually attracted to when you are older. So that's what they found. Depending on what you imprinted on, depended on your mate preferences. Okay, and this was called sexual imprinting. Okay, here's a little video. Have a little look at this one. Answer these questions. It's a Tom and Jerry. Why did the duckling imprint on Tom? Outline one practical reason for using animals rather than humans when studying attachment behavior, and suggest one ethical reason for using animals rather than humans when studying attachment. Why did Tom imprint? Why did the duckling imprint on Tom? The duck imprinted on Tom because he was the first object he saw after hatching. Outline one practical reason for using animals rather than humans when studying attachment behavior. Animals breed fast, so the result can be seen within one generation, okay? Humans take a long time. You've got to get to the age in which you can have children and then have another one and then wait for them to grow up. That's a long time, right? Whereas animals, they got a quick breeding process. And then one ethical reason why using animals rather than humans when studying attachment behavior, you can put animals in situations such as deprivation, whereas it would be unethical to do this to humans. Some people would argue it's unethical to do this to animals anyway. Other people would say it's perfectly fine. And that really depends on where you fall in the animal sort of research. And that's imprinting, okay? Identify one thing you learned about imprinting. Why do you think learning about imprinting is important? And how does imprinting apply in real life? Who is this information useful to? Okay, that's learning objective 2 done. Identify and analyze imprinting. Yes. Check. Ching. Right, we're going to move on to learning objective 3 to be able to discuss and evaluate research done by Lorenz. Let's evaluate Lorenz's research. What are some of the strengths and limitations of Lorenz's research? Okay, I've peeled this one for us, okay? This is what ideally your peel paragraph should look like, okay? So, generalizability to humans. Point. Lorenz was interested in imprinting in birds. Although some of his findings have influenced our understanding of human development, there is a problem in generalizing from findings on birds to humans. Okay, issues of generalizability. Evidence. For example, mammalian mothers show more emotional attachment to young than do birds, and mammals may be able to form attachments at any time, albeit less easily than in infancy. Explanation. It seems that the mammalian attachment system is quite different from that to birds. And then link. This means that it is not appropriate to generalize any of Lorenz's ideas or findings to humans. That's ideally how your peel paragraph should look. Point, evidence, explain, and link. That is a weakness. Some of Lorenz's observations have been questioned. Okay, here's another peel paragraph. Point. Later researchers have questioned some of Lorenz's conclusions. Evidence. For example, the idea that imprinting has a permanent effect on mating behavior. Gouton et al. In 1966 found that chickens imprinted on yellow washing up gloves would try to mate with them as an adult. As Lorenz would have predicted, it seems that these chickens have sexually imprinted onto these yellow washing up gloves. However, with experience, they eventually learned to prefer mating with other chickens. This suggests that the impact of imprinting on mating behavior is not as permanent as Lorenz believed. Right, can you summarize those two evaluative points for us, please, into exactly 10 words? If you want to challenge yourself, can you think of any of your own criticisms using the grave or scout technique that can be found at the front of your booklets? Right, that's the evaluation of Lorenz's research. I'm ticking it off. To be able to discuss and evaluate Lorenz's research, yes, we got a couple of evaluative points. The biggest mark question you can get on specifically Lorenz is an 8 marker. So therefore you don't need more than 2 evaluative points. You could be asked a 16 marker on animal studies in general, and then you'll be asked to discuss another animal research that we're going to learn next lesson, which is Harlow. And then we'll learn a couple more, 2 or 3 more evaluative points for that one. There we go. Let's move on to the plenary now. Task. Using your device, find out more about Lorenz's research to create a mind map. Consider the following: procedures, findings, ethical issues. If I remember correctly, Lorenz actually won a Nobel Prize for this research that he done in on imprinting. You know, this was an incredible thing that people found. No one knew this before. So there we go. Psychology can pay. And that is lesson 4, animal studies. Next lesson is lesson 5, animal studies, on Harlow's research that was done with monkeys. Right. Well done, my neuropsychologist. Good work today. I hope you found that useful. I'm Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills, cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex, they told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick, now load up the film.